Joining us now, Josh Dawsey, Washington Post political investigations reporter, and Mark McKinnon, former advisor to George W. Bush and John McCain's presidential campaigns. Okay, Mark, as someone who has worked on those campaigns, can you imagine what it's like right now? How to make a strategic decision about the candidate that balances both safety, the recommendations that are sure to come from the Secret Service if they haven't already, and their need, the calendar that tells them they want to be out there among the people?
Sure. Glad to be with you. The effect this has on the campaign is serious, but they can deal with it. They have what their goal is to have rallies, to have venues, and they can have indoor rallies. It doesn't really, their primary mission is to get his message out. He can do that in all kinds of venues that aren't huge outdoor stadiums. The real impact that this has is on the candidate himself and his own psyche. He's the guy that loves the outdoor rallies. He's the guy that loves the huge crowds. So the impact really is not so much on the campaign as it is on the candidate himself. And I think that they'll adapt, and I think that obviously Secret Service is doing their best. But from an overall net impact on the campaign and getting its message out, I don't think it'll have that big an impact.
So, Josh, we know the Secret Service has been concerned about golf courses for a while now, and in fact, open spaces generally, right? But I spoke to Carol Leonnig, who you know, obviously, your colleague, who has done extensive reporting on the Secret Service. And I asked her about what Trump can and can't do, even if the Secret Service advises against it. Here's what she told me.
He can continue to golf. He can continue to hold outdoor events. But I think he's going to be counseled that this is not safe. It's so important for candidates to be near the people in the weeks and days before the election. Well, everyone now knows that is what got John F. Kennedy killed. He insisted to the Secret Service over and over again, I want an open car so that voters can see me coming by.
So I know, Josh, you've done extensive reporting on the frustration inside the Trump campaign when it comes to having to cancel or reschedule events because there were folks who said it wasn't going to be safe. What more can you tell us about the thinking inside the campaign?
Well, I think there's a little bit of paranoia right now, and understandably so. I mean, there's been 2 assassination attempts or potential assassination attempts on his life, both, attempts in the last couple of months. One that obviously, a bullet hit him. I think in the years after he left the presidency, Donald Trump and the Secret Service were not maybe as careful as they are these days. You had people going in to his golf club who had not been searched or wanted. You had fears of, people at his club that they didn't really know who they were at times because members can bring other people. It wasn't nearly as much of a strict security protocol as has been in place recently. The Secret Service has deployed, lots of snipers. They've closed down roads. They've really changed their posture towards him since the horrific and awful attacks on July 13, when the guy got 140 yards on top of a building and fired a gun and hit the former president. So I think what's changed is how much resources and how many people they have around him and the concerns that are around him now. I mean, one of his people told me recently that they thought they live in a military encampment now, and that's very different than it was before.
Yesterday, and it continues through today, Mark, there have been a number of what looked like statements by the former president. In fact, we didn't actually get a statement from him until late in the evening. I think it was in the 11 o'clock hour. What we were actually seeing before that were fundraising emails. Does it surprise you at all that they very quickly did a turn to, first of all, blame a lot of this on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, saying they're the ones who are ramping up the rhetoric and telling people to send them money?
Nothing surprises me at all in politics anymore. And they'll take advantage of anything to raise money. And it was literally seconds within the announcement that fundraising emails were going out. So yes, they're going to take full advantage of this, and this is part of Donald Trump's whole psyche is to show no fear. And he may say the campaign's really concerned, but I have no concerns. He does the raised fist thing. when he was literally shot at. And so, I mean, his whole brand is to get out there and be fearless about this. But listen, the campaign's going to be smart about it, as will the Secret Service. They're not going to put him in any venues where there's going to be any danger. And as you just reported, any of those venues that he's coming to, they're going to go above and beyond anything they've ever done before to ensure his safety.
Yeah, Nassau County made it very clear, Josh, what they plan to do. And I wonder what you're hearing. And I know it's really early. And again, we have not even seen the meeting between the acting Secret Service director and Donald Trump. But are there conversations that are ongoing about what this means, for example, for the UN General Assembly, which is next week in New York City, what it might mean for Kamala Harris if they give a certain level of security to Donald Trump? Will they match that with Kamala Harris? What are the kinds of questions that they have to decide and settle on now?
Those are good questions. I don't know the answer to them. I know for Trump, his people say he's keeping his schedule just as it was this week, that he will be doing every event he was as planned. I mean, we saw more bulletproof glass already go up around these candidates recently. You saw after the July 13th shooting, the Secret Service warned Trump about doing any outdoor events, and they later sort of made a decision they could do bulletproof glass around him. You're seeing a lot of, back and forth with the Secret Service and the Trump campaign on, can we do this event? Can we do that event? He said publicly he wants to go back to Butler, where the first shooting happened earlier this summer, before the end of the campaign season. So I think what really is the dynamic now is you're having a lot more intense conversations on every event. Can we do this? Can we pull this off? Is this safe? And you have to imagine it's the same, maybe not exactly the same, but similar in some ways with Kamala Harris. I mean, she's getting, the vice president's getting, large crowds at venues. She's getting, 10, 15,000 people at some of these events and in arenas. She's doing airplane hangar events. We've seen her do. I mean, these are all kinds of the venues that, cause concern with the Secret Service.